been recognized by the Smithsonian Institute, National Public Radio, the Tennessean, and the New York Times. And in addition, she's a best-selling author of The Moth Presents A Point of Beauty. Today, these two come together to share for the first time the photographic journal of a place called the National Heritage Area that starts in the historic city of Lithonia and runs to the monastery in Conde. And so I wanted to put a point in two things happened that I want to say before I put a point in where I hope they'll start with us today. When you came in this room, let me tell you what history did instantly. It brought us together, we gravitated to a table, and even without being prompted, we got to these authors and we said, Bridget's gonna sign my book, Jeff is gonna sign my book right now. This was like more like a family reunion because many of you in this room feel these pages, you know these people, you grew up in these spaces. I thought today about what went into deciding to do the book, what did you discover in that process, and then talk a little bit about the process, because being in this office, we got quips of who they look like days after their writing. They didn't write in this space. I'm going to let them share with you where the true writing of this book went in an undisclosed location. It was in Lithonia, but I'll let them share what came out of the writing lab. But if both of you all would allow us to first just welcome you to the space as Authors International. The book, but maybe just a little context about what went into the decision, when you knew you'd do it, what you discovered in doing it, and the places that you went.
I grew up reading Images of America. I was always one of those kids that read a lot of books, just like Jeff. And they were some of my earliest depictions of history in my community. So when Jeff came with the idea, it was like, do you want to write one of these books that you read? And at first I was like, I don't know about that one. I don't know if I got time for that. We do a lot of paperwork. Elisa knows about all the paperwork that we do. But Jeff was like, I think we can get it done, and was definitely the earliest champion for making it happen.
Yeah. And how I got turned on to arduous journeys and like hundreds of rejections and lots of feelings of failure. And this book was the complete opposite. Arcadia Publishing reached out, the Heritage Area reached out to me just a couple of months after I had begun as communications manager. And at the time I told them I had just begun working, I wasn't ready to tackle it, and I would follow up down the road, which was just a brush off. I had no intention of following up. That's too much work, sorry. And I had been a writer. I mean, I've always wanted to be a writer, but I never really thought of writing a history book. So this was a little bit outside my lane. Flash forward to when Bridget joined, and we had a good rapport, we had a good workplace relationship, and I asked her, this was more than a year after they had reached out, if she would be interested, just as I wanted to write something. I wanted to have some kind of book with my name on it, and thank goodness she said yes, because I could not have done it on my own, would not have wanted to do it on my own. And we followed up with Arcadia with our proposal, and they said, yeah, let's do it. So we had 1 year after signing the contract to gather the photos, gather the information, write it all, edit it all, turn it in. And a year might seem like a lot, but it's not a lot for a book like this. I mean, there's almost 220 images in there. Every one of those images had to be checked and fact-checked, and we had to write it and edit it. So, yeah, it was a lot. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, we had a whole lot of fun.
A whole lot.
Especially the writing portion and the non-disclosed Lithonia location and the... we had a lot of fun, yeah, writing.
Jeff's house was the creative lab, his kitchen table. Eventually my legs would go numb. We'd sit on the couch at that point. A lot of Al Green.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The soundtrack for writing.
Nice.
I love Al Green. And we thoroughly enjoyed it. And while
Nice.
it was tedious at some points and annoying at some points, especially during rewrites and edits, trying to work with Georgia Archives, man, Georgia Archives, Lord Jesus. But we enjoyed it, and we got it done. And we got it done effectively and efficiently.
Awesome.
One of the things that we delighted at watching the two writers come into the office, because while they describe this as a lot of work, that's an understatement, because at the same time, she serves as assistant executive director, Jeff is communications, so they were carrying a whole job while writing during the same work week. So big, just hats off to you for that. Talk about some of the things you discovered, because you would come in here with excitement, and I remember stories of you saying they would start like, somebody knocked at my door, and guess what, Ron? And then we'd go from there. What were some of those amazing discoveries you were making?
I discovered that Dudley's in Lithonia.
Uh-oh.
Everybody is related to everybody in Dudley's in Lithonia. So once I'm sitting at the bar and started telling people I'm writing a book about Lithonia, and just that word spread like wildfire around the bar. It was just like people now walking up, just, you know, my uncle and my cousin. And I was like, well, here's my card. Call me after this margarita. But it worked out beautifully, and it really showed just how close-knit, because I'm from Memphis, it showed me how close-knit the community of Lithonia is and how deep this history actually really runs.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, so much of the metro area has changed, and it feels not like a community, but Lithonia, it still feels like a community. It still feels like a small town. As Richard said, everybody knows everybody. People just, I can't walk down the street without people being like, Arabia Mountain, what's up? I'm like, I'm off today, thank you. How's it going? And to that point, just walking around and asking people for photos, they would say things like, go to the Henry Funeral Home, which is a beautiful historic funeral home. It's been used for a lot of film shoots. The movie Dumb and Dumberer was filmed in there, if anybody remembers the funeral home scene. But they had hanging up on a back wall just dozens of old historic photos. Probably about 10 of them wound up in the book. People would say there's, somebody who used to dance ballet in New York. She grew up in Lithonia. She still lives in Lithonia. She's got historic photos. The library. People said, go to the library. There's a case in the back of the library. Just open it up. It's not organized at all. It's complete chaos. But there were historic photos in there, especially of like Max Cleland, who became a U.S. Senator. I live on the same street that Max Cleland grew up on. And people who didn't live in Lithonia as well. Like today we have one of the biggest contributors to the book, Penny Thomas, sitting front row here. She contributed almost all the photos to the Lying Farm chapter. I went to visit her house about an hour away. She said she had boxes and boxes of stuff just in her living room. And sure enough, she had boxes of photos that are 100 years old, documents, receipts, land deeds, things that are 160 years old. There's this panel in Civil War garb in his private uniform before he's about to go fight for the Confederacy. This was just in a box in her living room. As I was leaving, my car was already loaded up with boxes. She's like, I've got some more right here. I'm like, I'm really full. And she just reached in this box and pulled out that photo, which is one of the oldest photos in her book. She's like, I don't even know what this is. And I was like, oh, damn. Like, that's what you have here. I mean, it really signified like how much history people have, but also how fragile it is, because Penny could not find family members who were willing to continue to be stewards of this history and to keep it. I mean, it's a lot of work, boxes and boxes, generations worth of photos and documents that she very generously donated a lot to us and a lot more to the DuQuoin History Center.
History is probably the best story that you'll ever read. Like, you can go and read a fiction novel all day, but sometimes the truth is better than fiction. And I think that history is important because that is quite literally our personal story. Good, bad, ugly, right and wrong. These are our stories, and if we don't tell them, if we don't keep them alive, not only will we be doomed to repeat so much of it, some of it is going to be lost. And with that loss of history is a loss of identity.
Absolutely.
Personal identity, cultural identity, national identity. So I think it's important that we try to keep it at the forefront and remember that history is one of the connectors of people, and it doesn't have to be a division. It could be something that brings us together if we interpret it properly.
Yeah, I agree with that history can bring us together. I love what you just said, history is the best story. I mean, I primarily like to write fiction, but, I agree. They say that reality is stranger than fiction, and Mark Twain said, well, yeah, reality doesn't concern itself with believability. So, it's true, anytime you write a short story or work of fiction, you're always concerned, is this believable, is there verisimilitude? But if you're writing a history, you're like, no, that crazy shit happened just like that. And yeah, it's, y'all can come on.
There's several open seats that you can see them. If you could, in a world and create it yourself, how would you first get more of this history into school systems? Why is it important? Where do we misfire by not having it in those places?
Man, that's a big question. I think for one, we started with the textbooks. I know like McGraw-Hill was like the publisher when I was in grade school. And not taking away anything from McGraw-Hill, but I definitely think that there could be some more insight into how those textbooks are written and what stories get told in those books, and be a lot less concerned about offending people and more concerned with telling the whole story.
That part.
Yeah, I think two things. One is taking the students to the history, and we do that a lot here at the Radio Alliance. Like, we do a lot of field trips. We try to take people to Bruce Street. We take them to Lion Farm. We take them to Arabia. We want them to not just read about the history, but to actually see it, to experience it, to feel it. And I think who tells the history? I mean, a lot of these textbooks, they were written by white people. They were written with ulterior motives to try to cover up a lot of the bad stuff that white people did. And, you know, like working with Bridget on this book, I could have read as many books as I wanted and had a great understanding of Black culture, but I could never bring the personal perspective that Bridget brought to a lot of this history, to a lot of the stories and the people in the book. So I think, you know, even that, just collaborating on writing histories, I mean, it's a collaborative country. I mean, this idea that there is a hard line between us and our history, I mean, it's kind of an illusion that people choose to believe in.
On that note,
Good morning. We have another board member.
Come on in, another board member. Okay, to hear and to see is to spend a little time in these pages. Could we move and have you all, without further ado, read from the book? And then we'll entertain some more questions from the audience.
Sure. You want to start? Sure.
You want this?
Stories. We didn't want them to just be captions. We wanted each one to be almost like a gem and a gemstone and a necklace of stories that told a bigger story. So I'll just read a few and then I'll show you all the photos. It'll be like a little storybook moment. So this exterior photo of the Coffers Brothers store shows what appears to be an interracial group of boys sitting at the corner of Main Street in downtown Lithonia. This is page 35 for those who have the books. Even during segregation, interracial friendships were accepted in children up to an age, usually adolescence. However, into adulthood, such relationships were rare and heavily discouraged. You can see the group of boys in that right corner there. This aerial photo and the photo below from 1960 is the only known image of the Lithonia Country Club and its racetrack, the Lithonia Speedway. Before the rise of modern NASCAR, segregated racing leagues operated through the South, including at the Lithonia Speedway, where black racers were pioneers in the sport. Today, where the club and track were located is a landfill, another example of how infrastructure and eminent domain were used to destroy the wealth and cultural landmarks of black communities. This is a point that I come across again and again in our history, where they used eminent domain to, you know, they never ever routed a highway through a rich white neighborhood. It was always through a poor neighborhood, through a diverse neighborhood. Next page, 36. This is about one of sort of the local figure, Elmer Scales. Even from an early age, Elmer Scales was a fan of cars. Above, he poses with sisters Minnie and Benny in front of the prize Pontiac around 1940. He later became a fixture around town, working at the Texaco station on Main Street, usually clad in his uniform. Tragically, his son Douglas was drafted into Vietnam and was killed in action in 1968 at only 20 years old. Douglas, along with Richard Floyd Burnham Jr. and Floyd Eugene Collins Jr., were the three soldiers from Lithonia who lost their lives in the conflict. Their names are now on the Lithonia Vietnam War Memorial in Cali Park. So here you can see Elmer in this top photo, younger with his sisters. And here he is years later in his Texaco uniform in front of a structure that's still standing in Lithonia, known as a seminary. Very old structure. It looks basically the same. I'm going to skip ahead a couple of pages to some of the figures, some of the main. I'll do 41 actually. Power players, this photo here, in Lithonia civil rights and politics attend a party in 1973. On the left is Allison Al Venable, who in 1984 would be elected as the first black mayor, not just of Lithonia, but of all DeKalb County. He is joined by, from left to right, his wife Juanita, Maggie Woods, and Lucius Sanders, a Lithuanian civil rights icon who encouraged Venable's mayoral run. When we found this photo, we didn't know, we recognized Maggie Woods and Lucius Sanders on the right here, but we didn't know that that was Al Venable, the first black mayor of Lithonia. And I remember thinking, man, I love his hair. I love that big fro. Next photo, Lucius Sanders vowed after returning from fighting in World War II to fight for voting rights and equality for African Americans at home. After leading voter registration drives in DeKalb County, he founded the Lithonia Civic League to continue this work and become the first black member of the DeKalb County Parks and Recreation Board. Sanders remained civically active even into old age when arthritis meant using crutches to get around, as we see in this photo. When we first got this photo, we didn't understand why he was in crutches. Did he break his leg? Did he have an accident? And it was Marcia Glenn Hunter, another former board member, first black woman mayor of Lithonia. She told us that older age he had arthritis and had to use crutches to get around. And I thought it was a great photo because it really humanizes him. Here's this great figure, this local civil rights icon, but even he, into old age was fighting, fighting our bodies. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit and read a couple of captions from the one of the biggest characters in this book, I feel like, was Wallace Lyons. And now you'll hear a little bit why he was such a big character. This bottom photo on page 68. Wallace Lyon holds his new daughter, Ruth. Although only in his 30s in this image, Wallace had already led a rich life. He grew up with Thee Lyon, the son of Mary, a former enslaved woman. One day, while swimming in the South River together, Wallace stepped on a snake that bit him. Thee dragged his friend to the Lyon house where Wallace recovered, but he suffered fainting spells for the rest of his life. Next photo, 3 generations of the Lyon family gather for a photograph including Granny Helen Lyon at far right in the center row. Wallace, standing at far right, looks self-assured as king of his own little country kingdom, but his reign would be short-lived. On October 23, 1924, Wallace and his son George were cutting a massive red oak when the tree split about halfway up, falling on Wallace and killing him. He's in that upper right corner there with his hat sort of tilted. Yeah. One of the things that surprised me the most in flipping through this book, you'll see several photos of people out on, as you see on this photo on page 70, they're out on the outcrop, they're out at, this is Panola Mountain, enjoying themselves, picnicking. People have been enjoying these mountains for hundreds of years. We don't know for a fact, but we could presuppose that the native populations also enjoyed these mountains, that they were special spots. And so this photo sort of shows that.
How did you figure out it was Panola?
Because the Lyon family, that's a great question. I mean, looking at it, we couldn't tell just by looking at it if it was Arabia Panola, but the Lyon family were so close to Panola and they had such a close relationship to it that they
That makes
frequently-
sense. Yeah,
yes.
that makes sense.
And now it could be, you're pointing out a little hole, this could be Arabia. Maybe they made an exception and said, let's picnic at Arabia today, and we got it wrong. But we probably won't know, but
Sorry.
with 90% certainty it's Panola. So this is Wallace's son. Wallace had passed away with a tree falling on top of him. Wallace's son, George Osmore Lyon, picnics on the outcrop at Panola with friends or cousins. Panola, also called Little Stone Mountain, rises dramatically to the south of Lyon Farm. For generations, the Lyons had a close relationship with it. The enormous granite blocks in the Lyon House foundation were hand-cut from Panola. These stones are still visible in the basement, which was a former slave quarters. Prior to the arrival of settlers, the Willani River, as the Muskogee Creek knew it, served as a major artery for trade, food, and day-to-day living and leisure. Now known as the South River's body of water, served the same purpose for generations of residents until industrialization in Atlanta's first sewer system left the river contaminated. Today, the river has not been fully restored. I thought this was a great photo of country living back in the day. Here we are on this, barely looks like a boat, looks like something rigged together into a boat. I guess they're going on the other shore because if you look closely on the other shore, you can see what looks like some people waiting for them. The South River was one of those sites that we talked a lot about, including its own chapter, but we didn't find a lot of photos, historic photos of the South River, a few scattered here and there, so we ended up making the creative decision, well, let's put the South River sort of throughout wherever we can find it instead of its own chapter. The South River has been restored quite a bit through the work of Dr. Jacqueline Eccles and the South River Watershed Alliance, but it's still, it's on its way to recovery, but not quite there yet. Yeah, I think that's all I'll read for now.
At the top, you'll see Ada Anderson Beck. And we have here Ada Anderson Beck, known as Miss Ada, served the Black community as head chef for the students of the Lithonia Negro School for years. She was best known and admired for her vegetable soup served with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, said her daughter-in-law, Mae Frances Anderson. In addition to feeding the students, she taught student helpers her culinary secrets, making most meals from scratch. Now, I'm a true city kid. This stood out to me because I grew up in the Memphis City school system where we ate Hot Pockets for lunch some days, you know. And like my fiance back there comes from a small rural community, and when he talks about the things that he had for lunch, it was like real people cooking real food in the kitchen. Like you had like stew for lunch at school, which was wild to me. So when I was reading about Miss Anderson, I was like, this reminds me of things that I've heard from him in a different time period where school wasn't just learning, it was also nutrition and community and home cooked meals, and these people were your second parents. And so much of that, I think we're losing a lot of that today.
We lost.
Next up, a bigger part of my career, unfortunately, are telling the hard stories, the ones that make people squirm in their seats a little. And I would be remiss to not continue in that fashion today. On page 29 at the top, you'll see a photograph of the Lithonia High School basketball team. The caption says, even friendly overtures to Lithonia's Black community could have explosive consequences. In the early 1950s, Lithonia High School's new principal, who was from the North, invited the Bruce Street basketball team to practice at their court when the White High School's team, seen here, was not using it. Bruce Street alum Howard Lee, who goes on to become the first Black
Mayor of
Chapel Hill, North Carolina, was there when he wrote in the book, The Courage to Lead. He says, and I quote, "We had been practicing about a half an hour when suddenly the doors burst open and there stood a group of angry-looking white men. We recognized most of them as Klansmen. What was most shocking, however, was that leading the group was Mr. Charlie Davidson, the chairman of the County School Board of Education. Davidson berated the Bruce Street team, and the following day had Lithonia's principal from the North run out of town." And
There was a nature preserve, and whose son gave them out to Overton County.
yeah. So these are the types of stories that, when we think about how we commemorate people and who we commemorate them for their greatness, and we champion these people for the things that they did to lift some people up. But in that commemoration, sometimes we forget about the people that they stepped on their way up the ladder. Especially when we start talking about stories of people who were before the Civil Rights Movement. These are the stories that often make people uncomfortable, because when we start addressing racism and we start addressing the history of hate crimes and domestic terrorism, often that causes people to have to deal with their own personal identity. Because, oh my gosh, how can you tell me that Papa was racist? Papa brushed my hair, and Mama rubbed my back when I was sick on Tuesdays. But Papa and Mama were also extremely racist. How do we reconcile with both of these stories? The only thing that we can do is continue to tell them. Next, I want to push us a little bit farther, page 76. One of my favorite pictures is of, and I know Mr. Johnny Wace is back there, he will agree. The men that you see here, following emancipation, Black Americans actively created upwardly mobile communities. And at the core was the church. Baptist and Methodist churches were some of the most common denominations for Black Americans. Seen in this photograph are church trustees for Flat Rock Methodist Episcopal Church. The original church was built in 1896 when community members came together, raised money to purchase the land, and constructed the building. Spencer Bryant, seated front row center, is the great-great-grandfather of actor and comedian Chris Tucker. So when we talk about legacy, and we talk about longevity, and we talk about upwardly mobile Black communities, Flat Rock is truly a bedrock for that ideal, because they quite literally were enslaved on the Lyons, Johnson, and South plantations right here up the street. And immediately following emancipation, established a church, a school, and a lived experience that is continuing to thrive and succeed until this very day. And I think one of the best and most beautiful things about the Black community is our audacity to thrive despite every circumstance set against us.
Resilience.
And this picture is an homage to the beauty and the audacity of Black people in our joy. I think I'll leave it right there.
So how did you make that editorial choice?
I think oftentimes the word count limit made that choice. We had 70 words per caption, or if it was a combined caption, it was 140 words. So the 70 words per photo, basically, that was the limit to tell a lot of these stories. And each introduction had, I think, a 300-word limit to the chapters. So, but I mean, I think, you know, it was a discussion about which stories to include and which ones not to include.
Yeah.
I
We
feel
had
like
some that were getting cut very last minute, like getting ready to turn it in. It was just like, we can't include this one. And that we earlier discussed, you know, the possibilities of writing a second one for that exact reason, because there's so many stories that didn't get included. And there were so many people, once we turned it in, it was like, well, I got this picture that, you know, it was like, well, it's too late, but we can do it again.
and there were some that, you know, the story kind of, there was more to add to it. I mean, that caption Bridget read about Charlie Davidson berating the Black players and students from the Bruce Street School. The story didn't end there. A few weeks later, some basketballs were sent to the Bruce Street School, which at the time was called the Lithonia Negro School. You had the Lithonia School, which was for whites, and you had the Lithonia Negro School, which was for the Black population. When they received those basketballs, they thought, oh, this is mea culpa, this is like a I'm sorry from Charlie Davidson and the school board in Lithonia. Well, it turns out the postman had made a mistake. He was supposed to deliver those basketballs to the white Lithonia school. The Lithonia Negro school returned those basketballs to the Lithonia school, and they said, you know what, we don't want them now, simply because Black students had touched them. So they ended up giving the basketballs back to the Lithonia Negro school. And so the students wound up with new basketballs, but for, you know, kind of all the wrong reasons. And, you know, that was a story. That was one of those like extensions of a caption that we really wanted to include because it shows the complexity of this. It shows how deep it goes. Like Black folks back in the day couldn't even touch something without white folks rejecting it and viewing it as tainted. You know, so that was. Yeah, I mean, when we do a second book, then we'll do this again.
Second story.
Second story.
So I have a question. What is something out of this process that you learned about yourself that you did not know prior to, you know, engaging in this task or whatever?
That I
What's
may
something
have,
you learned?
that I may have ADHD. I learned a lot from Jeff. I'm a person who writes. Jeff is a writer. I'm a historian through and through. When it comes to dates, times, facts, people's stories, I'm your girl. But taking those dates, times, people's facts, and putting them onto paper and making this digestible to the community and synthesizing information in such a way that everybody can pull something from it was something that Jeff definitely taught me throughout this process. Even certain things like grammar, like, oh my God, so many moments that I was like, well, I want to say this way. And he was like, well, as a writer. So it was like going back to English class in all of the best ways, and it definitely made me a better writer in the process. So I really appreciate that.
Well, Bridget is a writer. I disagree. You're a great writer, and I keep every time we talk, I'm like, that's a story. You need to write that down. Like that's an essay or something. But I think something that surprised me was how collaborative a book is. I mean, I think before this book, I thought of a book as just the author and the name on it. But I mean, so many people in this room, if it were, you know, they were instrumental in making this book and finding information and getting us photos and sending us leads to other people who had photos. The book would not have come together at all without the community behind it. And I hope we named enough people in the acknowledgements. We had a list.
Yeah.
If you're not in the acknowledgements, what?
Talking to our head, not our heart.
But yeah, I really, yeah, it made me fall in love with books even more, I would say.
Oh, that was an easy one. We've seen, since I've been here, I think that may be the first photo that I saw and had questions about, and when Jeff brought it to my attention, it was like, I really think this is the one. I think originally there was some back and forth about this image. I think we couldn't get it to fit or something.
They wanted a higher quality, higher resolution shot.
But we couldn't not take that picture of those quarry workers, because we use that picture when we tell the story of the Bruce Street School, and we call it the school that the community built because they quite literally built that school by hand. And I've never worked in a quarry, by the grace of God, but I know that is labor, and like not
Intensive.
simple labor. That is labor. And to know that those men were working in a quarry every day and then getting off and building a school, I don't even want to cook my child dinner some days. And you built a school. So I think that picture spoke for itself, and it was kind of like a done deal. It wasn't a long deliberation.
Mm-hmm. We picked, I think, 10 cover shots to send to the publishers just as like consideration. Most of those cover shots are on pages 46 and 47. Almost all of them were like quarrying shots. And then in the end, I think the publisher was the one who decided the cover shot. Like maybe
Are connected to this book, maybe just a few moments dedicated to how you are, and if some of the folks that you know in the streets that you've walked or know about are in this book, if you care to share with the rest of us.
Well,
That was
that
gonna
is
be my
just
question.
questioning.
Okay. Is there?
Ms. Shaw?
My grandfather is on page 36, Elmer Scales, and the family. So, of course, this is my cousin Malachi. His grandfather was my grandfather's brother. My sister is over there, Monica. So, growing up in Lithonia, our roots are here. I knew like certain things about my grandfather because I was super close to my grandfather. And this book, when you all reached out to us, to our family, and I was like, pictures. So I have all the pictures for all family from way, way back. And I've gotten to know Bridget, and I've met Jeff. We've kind of talked and came over here. And the thing is that I appreciate that you all are finding or making the world know about Lithonia, Conyers, Rockdale, Arabia Mountain, and this just how the struggle was for our family. And I was telling you, like my family also, and we were talking about, we're promised land from Gwinnett County. That's my great-grandmother's side, well, my great-grandmother's family. So our families are educators. They're constantly trying, they work hard to do these things and make a change and make a difference, just as well as other families in this book. So I'm so excited to read about this book. I can't wait to take this home and look at all of the people that I do know, some that I may not know about, and learn about that history. So it's really exciting. Thank you for everything that you all have done to bring awareness to Arabia. So now I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you think that this book and everything that you're talking about, the quarry, everybody's running to the quarry to go find the blue water?
Yes. Don't swap this.
With all, and
Page 39.
39. And this was just a snippet of him, but I'm very proud because I think he was one of the first college-educated black men in Lithonia. And he taught school, and he worked at DeKalb County, purified the water and everything, but he came from his father and grandfather worked on the quarries. They did that hard work on the quarries. My grandfather also had a farm, and everything was right there on Bruce Street. And I laughed because my mother was the senior director at the Senior Citizen for 33 years. And so when my father died, we buried him. He's right behind the police department up there on his family's plot. And so she always said, well, you know, I can always go back to Conyers to buy people. I said, no. I said, we going up here on Bruce Street. But I get it. But the where the cemetery is, that's where his grandfather's house was. And I understand it was a granite rock. It wasn't there when the school was there then, but all that was the land that he owned then. But all of his children went north. My father's father and 2 other brothers were the only ones stayed in Lithonia. And my uncle, his father's brother, a lot of the men in Lithonia came up with the granite business. They all were contractors. They made the granite rock buildings. They did the walls and everything. They did the walls at the big Oakland Cemetery up in Atlanta. And so they made their own business. They got out of the quarries and made their own business, rock masons and stuff. So a lot of them, a lot of the men in Lithonia, my growing up, were rock masons. So that was a big, they had their own little business, but that's where they came, derived from the quarries and stuff, and the granite and everything. And I was happy to have this little segment of head history in the book. But that's all. Thank you.
There's no denying this is your fault. Autograph books if you haven't, and I do know they like taking pictures too. Let me say this also. You don't just get here by chance. You come from somewhere historically. In this instance, this is Jeff's mom who came in from Alabama.
She's been my biggest supporter creatively. She's always been my biggest supporter. And please enjoy. There's some photos along the back, some little pop-up exhibitions we put, just so you can get. Some of these photos didn't wind up in the book, so you can maybe learn a little bit more. Just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you contributed to the book photos. How many people here? Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Quite a few, yeah. But yeah, Panola Mountain in the back, Veronica, we would not have a Panola Mountain chapter without them. They had a great archive. They were like, if you want to do this and find it out, we're like, yep, we'll do it.
Please eat the snacks, so we don't keep.
You just got a match picture. Match picture. Yeah. Are we rolling?
You want to, I got it in, hold on. You on video.
Did you get it? No, you matched the photo. So you matched the camera right there.
All right. This an iPhone?
Video.
This an iPhone?
It's not an iPhone. Are we rolling too?
You ready? All right. I took a couple.
Here you go. I'm about to run.
He about to run.
I'm about to run. Where you from?
Where baby girl go?
Where's that? Come over here eating all these snacks. Come on.
Listen. Don't knock it.
We just don't want them in that refrigerator. So
Okay, listen. You better stop playing.
you are so gorgeous.
Here you go.
She gonna work that off in the next 30 minutes when she go home. Bet you believe that.
Look, that's gonna get up that big old hill. We got to go where we walk down here.
She gonna make it. That's where she gonna burn that sugar off at.
Yeah, she gonna bring her right there. You right.
You gonna knock your wife out with the hat. All right, y'all ready? I'm gonna take a couple. Jeff, you photo bomb, and I'm gonna get Jeff in there too again. All right, I took a couple.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, let me have you sign both of these. So, one of them, let me see. What page Jeff went to? This one.
Jeff, and then this
So
one, yep.
that's Mr. Stonecrest. So that's my personal one.
Okay.
They're gonna sign it to Mr. Stonecrest.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'm gonna keep this real brief. I am so glad I was able to make it to the book signing. And when I say they couldn't have found two better authors, man, big shout out to Jeff and Bridget. I personally think you guys complement one another. And I mean, just unapologetically yourself, you know what I mean? Like just direct, frank, blunt, you know what I mean? Again, tell the story. All right, we can't run from our past. I mean, again, you know, for those, you know, if it strike a nerve, you got some internal work to do. I totally agree. You know, Hebrews, Israelites, Moorish, Black, African, Jamaican, Haitian. I'm just gonna say Black in a nutshell. You know, regardless of ethnicity and nationality, but those who we know to be Black, right? We're very resilient. I mean, in a lot of conditions we weren't meant to thrive in or to survive. I mean, we are here, and so again, I say to many of you, keep going. You know, it's an awesome thing. Embrace who you are. Be proud of who you are. This history book right here, like I say, I mean, it's an awesome start of the contributions of not just Blacks, but just Lithonia, you know, as a city, you know, over here on this east side, right? All right, guys, I just paused for about like 25, 30 minutes, man. Where was I? All right, I'll just say this and wrap things up, man. For all of you guys who out here represent L Town, Lithonia, and all of you guys that are from Lithonia, it's imperative you pick up this book and learn Lithonia history. If that's the city you represent and this is your neck of the woods, it's imperative that you pick up this book, learn the history. I mean, phenomenal story, rich history, heritage, and see for yourself, guys. I mean, again, I got the QR code, and you guys, I put it at the end of the video. Check out this book. Like I say, Jeff and Bridget definitely complement one another, and I don't think it could have been any other a better collaboration. I don't think it could have been a better collaboration. But so I got a couple of copies of whatnot. One as a souvenir, and I got one, you know, personally for myself. And I had those guys to sign it, as you can see. But like I say, it's imperative that you check it out. I encourage many of you to check it out. I want to say it's like the first book for like a national heritage area. Just go behind me or whatnot. And like I say, I'm glad I was able to attend the book signing. And so and to meet the authors, and shout out to you guys for your great work. And I'm looking forward to a part 2 already. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. And shout out to everybody that made it possible or whatnot. And like I say, my children are born and grew up right here. So of course they Stonecrest cool kids. All right, Stonecrest cool kids. And so shout out to Lithonia. And yeah. Hey guys, that's my time. Over and out.